Testing. Testing. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Virginia City Council Chambers. This is a regularly scheduled Committee of the Whole meeting. We have a full agenda today. We'll call this meeting to order. Today's date is Tuesday, November 7th, 2023. The time is 9:04 a.m. We have appearances, we have street and alley, building and grounds, personnel, finance, and other items of concern to discuss today, so we'll get through them as efficiently and as effectively as we can. We do have a quorum present today, and so we'll move forward with the regular schedule. We'll turn our rest of the committee of the whole agenda over to our city administrator, Britt C. Bennis. Britt?
Thank you. Item number 1 is George Eilertson from Northland Securities, here to discuss the financing for the Public Safety Center project.
Oh, would you want to turn the green light on? Good morning, George.
You're up first.
Good morning, Mayor, members of the council. Britt certainly could have done a longer introduction, that's fine. So this morning, I've just got a brief presentation for you on the upcoming financing for the Public Safety Facility project. As you're well aware of, the city received part of the project financing, the majority of the project financing through the USDA Rural Development. One of their requirements is the amount of the loan that you receive, in this case $21,610,000, needs to be, the city needs to go and issue interim financing during the construction period. So that's my presentation today, is to walk through that upcoming financing. And Britt passed out a couple of items as the meeting was about to start. One was an item with the logo of Baker Tilly. I, of course, work for Northland Securities, and Baker Tilly is the city's advisor. Northland is the underwriter on the upcoming financing. The other item is a resolution put together by Freiberger Buchanan, the city's bond counsel, and I'll review that in a moment. I'll refer back to the pre-sale summary, which is the one with the logo on the upper right-hand corner. And of course, today, November 7th, there on the, when we see those dates on the first page, I'll highlight that section first, council. November 7th, Committee of the Whole meeting, just to review the upcoming financing and the timeline. Next week, November 14th, the City Council would consider the resolution that was also handed out. That resolution is considered or referred to as a parameters resolution. It authorizes the City Council to move ahead on the issuance of the financing and to name a pricing committee. That pricing committee is the mayor, the administrator, and the finance director. And similar to other financings in the past, the parameters resolution allows you to price your bonds on any date, and any business date, that is. And so according to the schedule, we'd be looking at December 5th, the first part of December, to price the bonds, provided that the true interest cost is 5.75% or less. Based upon the current market, we're well under 5.75%. But for the parameters resolution, it has to have a figure in there, and you have to come in below that. So certainly more detail to come on that as we get closer to the financing. Right now, you'd be looking at a 3-year financing term, working with your finance director and your administrator, and provided information from Kraus Anderson and Wold. We're aware of the project, or the preliminary project timeline and the project completion date. So that's approximately 2 years in duration. What we've got is the financing structured with a 3-year term and the ability to call those bonds or exit the financing without penalty at any point after. And this is a figure that we're working on still, but a year or a year and a half. So we'll test the market conditions on that, but certainly you'll have the ability, once your project is done, to exit the financing at that date. That's important because at $21 million, there's some interest cost assigned to that. So we want to make sure that you can limit the amount of interest cost that you pay. So as noted, December 5th approximately, when we would price those bonds, and then December 12th, there would be a final resolution that the city council would consider to ratify that action. So December 21st, so by year end, you would have those proceeds of the bond issue in place. So Mayor and Council, that's the approximate timeline of the financing. Again, 21.6 million is it matches up with the amount of your USDA loan. One thing that we've certainly talked about with your staff is that the city intends to begin levying for project costs. Actually, you put it into your budget this year for first collection next year. What that does is actually saves you in the long run. The USDA in their budget put in $1.7 million of what's called capitalized interest. That's to cover the interest payments during the construction period. The city is actually levying dollars to cover those interest costs. So what that means is your long-term loan with USDA, once the project is done, you convert from short-term financing to long-term financing. At that time, you figure out, okay, how much long-term financing do we need? So as I indicated, $1.7 million is in the budget. More than likely, you'll see your long-term financing go down by that amount. So 21.6 million is your short-term bond. That long-term financing for 40 years at 3 5/8% will be figured out once the project is complete. So no official action today, council. It's just kind of setting the table for your city council meeting next week when there'll be the parameters resolution on your agenda. Mayor and council, any questions?
Thank you, George. Councilor Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, George. So, George, on the, when we convert over to the long-term financing with the USDA, what will the payment, approximate payment annually be? And is it paid biannually, or is it once a year, or if you could maybe go through that?
Sure. Good question. As part of the USDA application process, we needed to run that schedule for the USDA. The USDA has an annual payment, so one payment per year, typically on January 1st each year. However, if the city has another date they would prefer, it can be on that date. But typically on January 1st each year, the approximate, based upon the full 21.6 million at 3 5/8% for 40 years, is right at $1 million. So $1,031,000. As indicated a little bit earlier, we'll certainly resize this, or USDA will resize as there's capitalized interest, as I indicated, built into the budget. There's contingencies built into the budget. So hopefully your long-term financing will be less than that figure.
Okay, thank you for that. And then I do have a question. I have two more questions. The first one would be, then we are going to be levying $1 million each and every year for the total duration of the term that the USDA sets for the city. Is that correct?
Terry?
Mayor and council, to say it's going to be 1.1 million per year would probably, that would be if we knew everything was going to land right. Our hope is that it'll be around 1 million or less. And that'll be coming with the final, with the USDA loan when we finalize that. But in the meantime, we have a interim financing, which is a bond. And we're not going to need the full $21 million. So we are going to do like we did with the Iron Trail Event Center. And that is, we're going to invest. Because of the interest rates, we should also make some interest on it. And we will pull out the money as we need it.
So then will the levy change because of that investment?
Yes, I'm
Portion?
hoping, cumulative things of we have to be careful we don't make money on this bond, but if we can make enough to help with some of the cost, yes, I'm hoping, with the Iron Trail Motors Event Center, we made about $145,000 in interest, which went to pay for.
So my thought process is, I guess what I'd like to know, and I don't know, Sheriff, if you would have this information, or maybe George, I don't know if you would, but what I'm looking to know, historical data with Virginia and debt service levying, have we ever had this deep of a debt levy in the past? This is a pretty steep payment annually. Do you know in our past history, has the city done something this massive?
Yes, the Iron Trail Motors Event Center, but the sales tax is paying that levy.
Right, and I mean this, but this is levy-based without the sales tax as the offset. So I'm concerned going forward, this is gonna put an additional $1 million of debt onto the levy for the duration, if I'm understanding it correctly, for the duration, whether it's the short term with the bond and also as well as the long-term financing with the USDA.
Mayor and council, yes, the approximate debt service, and as noted, will get resized, but the approximate debt service over 40 years is $1 million a year. With your staff and previous council discussions, we've talked about a couple of factors. One, your LGA increase pretty closely matches to that figure. That was one of the items that we talked about earlier as well. There was 2 of your existing bond issues from 2008 and 2012 that fall off. That was close to $500,000 per year that would be somewhat offset here as well.
So we will be maybe doing some of that offsetting due to those factors of those 2 bonds dropping off. And then as well as, what was the other item you said?
Oh, the LGA,
The LGA.
local government aid increase.
Okay, and that's okay for us to earmark in that respect?
It's using funds from one.
It goes in the general fund regardless? Okay.
And if I can reassure you that we do have other bonds out there that will be dropping off. They have only a lifespan of either, normally it's 10 years.
And the
So-
lifespan on this one is how many years, George?
The term is 40 years.
40.
Once you convert to long-term financing, it would be 40 years.
Okay. And then the last question I have, Mayor, and I'd like to maybe get some help understanding, is the last page of George's handout. It's page 5, under the IRRB grant. Is that the only contribution of only $349,678 out of a $33 million project that the IRRB is willing to partner with the city of Virginia?
That is the only grant they've given us to date. That's for the demo. And then they have verbally committed $600,000 for the infrastructure, but we haven't been able to apply for that yet because we have not got the bids done yet, so we're still working on that.
Okay, and
If I could follow up on that as well for that particular question, if I may. I did have a conversation with the commissioner of the IRRB this morning about that very issue. And they'll be meeting in December and looking for the priority with respect to that, and was amenable to include some additional funding for the public safety building.
And I appreciate that. My question goes a little bit broader regarding the funding that the agency just, I guess, issued for the marijuana factory or manufacturing factory in Grand Rapids to the tune of, I think it was 20 million, not 10 million, that was in the email. So I'm concerned as to how the agency is doing their internal processes when looking at projects, because if the city's being expected to basically pay for everything through financing, we're undertaking a lot more than other entities do. And the only guarantee that the IRRB has with the funding that they're doing for the marijuana facility is they didn't even have a bond. All they have is an equipment, like a lien on their equipment. So I'd like to see a deeper conversation happen with a lot more funding than just $600,000. And I don't know how we can make that happen, but I'm concerned about how they're doing their internal processes and awarding different projects, different funding.
And according to the commissioner of the IRRB this morning, indicating that they're putting together a portfolio of the information that we need for our funding and others. Commissioner Rook Van indicated that public safety bill will be a priority in that discussion. An issue will be reaching out to our staff and to come into a conversation about what can the IRRB do to help alleviate some of the pressures that we have on that financing
Appreciate that.
package.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, George.
Thank you, George. Anyone else? Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. And just because Councilor Paulson triggered a couple things in my brains, we still have the opportunity to seek additional federal funding, and we'll continue to work on that, correct?
Correct.
And then,
The USDA is, the reason that they have us structure this debt is they're always the last one. So they make you get through your whole project, and then they wipe out all of your mortgage holders, all of your other stuff before they sign on.
and then the other thing that's popped into my head a few times is that local large corporations and businesses would have the opportunity to also contribute without naming rights or anything if they felt that it was that was something they could do. They could donate money to help build the public safety center too, couldn't they? So maybe there's some opportunities for some folks that use our services to help out in the future. It might not be a lot, but it might be enough for furniture or internal stuff. So just want to put that out there as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson. Councilor Freely.
Can I ask, so like the boost that we got in LGA for this year, can we anticipate that to sustain that amount over the course of the next 40 years? Or is there variabilities that in the formula that would potentially not guarantee us that additional monies per year? How do we stand with that? I don't understand how that all comes to fruition, but we got nearly $1 million boost in our LGA this year. It sounds as though that's going to be something that's necessary to sustain in order to be able to pay this $1 million bill, so to speak, on an annual basis. How guaranteed are we to sustain that additional $1 million for the city of Virginia over the next 40 years on an annual basis?
I can answer that partially for you, Councilor Freely. When testifying for the LGA previously last year, and getting the response from the presentation was made by the legislators that represent this district and down the metro area and the Speaker of the House. This LGA is, the formula is intact with a potential for next legislative session to look for some kind of what they call a cost of living increase or over a period of time so that it's sustainable for the long term. But at that level, it's in law at that level, unless the legislature goes back and revisits LGA and takes legislative action. I'm not saying that it's not likely, but that is our allocation. It's somewhat guaranteed unless the legislature completely changes the LGA formula moving forward. And the anticipation was that you remain at your current allocation. There's a potential for some additional increases based upon, the formula that's used to establish, the allocation we get from the state. And we check all the boxes with respect to those allocations. I hope that helps a little bit. Anyone else have a question for Mr. Eilertson?
Mayor, if I
Yes,
could
please.
make a couple quick points that I forgot to make earlier. One, it's mentioned on that first page that we will be working with Moody's Investor Service on the assignment of a short-term bond rating. The city has an existing bond rating with Moody's, and what we'd be looking for is, we're traditionally used to, BAA, AA type ratings. With short-term ratings, which are 3 years in duration or less, Moody's assigns what's called a MIG 1 or 2, and that's based upon the strength of the takeout financing. So the U.S. government is the takeout financing, and both Baker Tilly and our firm have had discussions with Moody's about getting that short-term rating in place. That will help the pricing of this short-term bond. And then the second point, I was just going to follow up on your finance director's point about investment of bond proceeds. We've been in discussion with the 4M fund, which does a certain amount of investing for the city. And the nice thing is currently short-term investment rates, investment yields are strong. They're 5.25 up to 5.35 on just their money market fund. So that's a very likely source or a place that you will transfer the bond proceeds once you receive them, and then that would be invested according to the construction draw schedule. So that's not worked into the sources and uses of the bond issue itself. That works its way into when we go to final closing with USDA, because if there's several $100,000 of interest earnings, that just means there'll be excess bond money left at the end, and then that long-term loan will be reduced. So more to come on that, certainly as we approach year 2 or year 3 when your project is done and you go to closing.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Eilertson. Any other questions for Mr. Eilertson with respect to this time? Again, no action to be taken at this level, although the next city council meeting, there'll be a resolution or a packet to move forward with the temporary general obligation charter bond issue, Series 2023B. Any other questions, comments? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have just one question, and I don't know if this would even be viable or an option to partially offset. Would there be any potential that we could go a 0.5% increase on sales tax for another project, or no? Not that anyone would like that, but I'm just asking.
Well, we'd have to do a referendum for the residents and businesses to authorize us to seek an increase in our local government sales tax and go through the same process we did when we had the 1%, and but that would take a significant amount of time. It can be done. I think we're going to be having a meeting with Representative Lizgard here next week, correct, Britt? Oh, today, yeah, this afternoon. Let's call time flies. And so we'll ask him about that. He's a tax committee chair.
I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, anything else? Thank you, Mr. Eilertson. As always, appreciate it very much.
Thank you, George. The second item on the agenda is Stuart Beauregard from Rangers Snowmobile and ATV Club requesting a letter of support from the city. I do not see him in the audience, but there is a letter in your packet from him.
As long as it doesn't cost the city any money, and as long as it doesn't have an adverse impact on the projects that we're working on today, I think it behooves us to, other communities is supporting the recreational activity in the future. So they're looking to seek some additional funding, and we're in support of their efforts. So, Councilor Motley.
So yeah, I know this isn't a Virginia club, but it looks like this club services Hoyt Lakes Aurora by Wabick, and their new trail from by Wabick to Gilbert then leads to Virginia. So I think we agree with the mayor, we should support this. So I would make a motion to direct city staff to make a letter of support.
A motion by Councilor Motley and supported by Councilor Johnson. Direct staff to issue a letter of support for the Range Snowmobile ATV Club for their new projects. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda comes from the Street and Alley Committee meeting that was held on October 23rd, 2023. The first item was we did discuss the proposed MnDOT Borgen Road and Highway 53 intersection improvements. And Councilor Friedlieb is the chairperson, and we do have Matt Reed from our city engineer of record here too.
Yeah, Matt, thank you for coming forward and sitting in on that meeting that we had on Street and Alley. Councilor Friedlieb also, as the chair of Street and Alley, we talked about that. And so if you could kind of give the general public and the rest of the council a little synopsis of what we discussed at that meeting.
Yeah, I will defer to Matt on that.
Okay, all right.
For the specifics.
Defer from the chair of the Street and Alley to Matt Reed. Matt,
Morning, everybody.
good morning.
Yeah, so we had a representative from MnDOT, Alex Peretz, came to the Street and Alley Committee meeting, it was last week or the week before, and gave us an update on the Borgen Road intersection design that they're working on right now as part of that overall Trunk Highway 53 corridor reconstruct with all those intersections related to the school and the city of Evelyn and the city of Virginia. In your packet, it's probably gonna be a little bit difficult to see just because it's a copy, but there is the plan that they came forward with, and that plan was developed based on prior conversations that I had with them as a city engineer, and then also other members of staff had given some input as well. And quite frankly, I believe we had other street and alley committee meetings prior to that, to them developing that plan. But this is right now at Borgen Road. I would say with barring any major concerns or changes requested by you as a city council, this is what they're planning on moving forward with as far as a realignment of Midway Drive. So they have to realign Midway Drive because currently, from a safety perspective, if they go and they've got a plan for a continuous green T in that intersection. I think we've talked about that before. In order to get Midway Drive away from the intersection and allow for more rooms for cars to stack and just for safety reasons, they have to realign that last leg of Midway Drive. And so you can see on that plan, Midway Drive routing in behind that old gas station and tying into Borgen Road. And then there's also some additional work on Borgen Road going to, I guess that would be the east, past White Cedar Drive. And that was actually discussions that went on with myself and Jim Rosfit, and then we ultimately discussed it at Street and Alley as to whether or not we wanted to plan now for the anticipated traffic volumes and turning movements that are going to occur at White Cedar Drive if that gate that goes into the ball field area is ultimately left open by the school district. As of right now, it's been open. They've been trying to alleviate some of the congestion. And long-term, we'll have to see how that goes once they get the roundabouts done and everything. But I know their initial long-term plan was to not leave that road open, but they might be changing their minds or might have a different plan moving forward. We don't know that yet. But anyway, so that shaded blue area that's to the farthest to the east is showing adding a couple of turn lanes, a right turn lane, eastbound right turn lane onto White Cedar Drive, and a westbound left turn lane onto White Cedar Drive. And again, that's to try to manage the traffic in that intersection a little bit better. So, that all said, I think what MnDOT is looking for from the city is, if you have any questions or concerns that they still need to address or give it the blessing that that's what we're looking at, that's what we'd like to see, and then they can move ahead with final design. Their schedule currently is a little bit up in the air. They're hoping to have this out for bids and constructed in 2025. And so that gives us an opportunity, which I believe that's the next item, so I won't go to that yet, but to talk about getting some additional funding. But I'm gonna stop, take a breath, and if I missed anything, Councilor Friedlieb or Mayor Coffey, please let me know, or I can answer questions if you have any.
Councilor Freely?
And just for the sake of further conversation, I know there was some concern at earlier meetings that I was at with Alex with regard to this project, that there was some business concerns to shutting off that access into Evelyn along the old, or is there still a radio station there? I'm not sure, and into towards the cemetery and so on. Have they got acquiescence from the city of Evelyn to do what they're proposing to shut that access off? Or has that not been agreed to yet on that end? Because there was nobody at our meeting that was representing that end, so that was a little interesting.
No, they're working independently with the city of Evelyn on that, and I can't see in the drawing here, but my understanding was that was gonna remain open, but it was only gonna be a partial intersection now. It's not gonna have there won't be a crossing movement coming across, but I could be wrong about that, so I wouldn't quote me on that, but did you have something there that you remembered?
I think I do. The plan was to close that road completely to automobile traffic.
Oh, that's right,
However,
trail.
keep it open as a trail for bicycles, pedestrians, and ATVs.
That's right, yep. That's right.
Then just from a practicality standpoint, from people that I've talked to that have attended athletic events in and around that area, and I know you coach baseball this summer, my understanding is there really is not enough parking space along White Cedar for the crowds that gather. And so White Cedar itself is going to be a parking lot in essence. I mean, there's cars parked along each side of it in addition to where there are parking spaces. So this additional extension is going to be absolutely necessary, in my opinion. But like, will it alleviate the issues that have already arisen? I don't see so necessarily. I mean,
It'll be more, to be honest with you, it'll be more for the safety of the people driving Borgen Road and the ability to get cars off of the main drive lanes of Borgen Road to be able to turn onto White Cedar Drive. When you're coming out of White Cedar Drive onto Borgen Road, it's, other than having now dealing with a dedicated left turn, you're not gonna see a whole lot different than you see now.
I think what's going to happen, and maybe it already has, is that you're going to have a lot of people, instead of heading on onto the highway, heading up and over Borgen to 135. So you're going to have an increased traffic flow up and over Borgen, which is going to necessitate the city to make improvements on Borgen Road too at some point as well in our planning for improvement on traffic flow through the city. So those are considerations that have to be taken in. And then I guess I was going to ask too, this extension to the east, is that an additional cost to the anticipated 800 some odd $1,000, or is that included in what we were going to be responsible for in the correction of this area?
No, the cost that Alex had shared with us was for all of the work that's shaded in pink, purple, whatever color that is, orange and blue.
That includes our responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to follow up a little bit more with respect to that, the purpose is for this proposal, and the state is looking for us to approve it as soon as we can. They have some funding sources that they've been able to acquire to try to reduce the costs associated with the intersection and others. And so they want to extend this up to the White Cedar Drive. And then the goal and objective is, I think, as we look forward more through our 2026 street and alley improvements, Borgen Road was originally on an earlier schedule to be completely done between Highway 53 and Highway 135, but because of the school and the other issues, that was held in abeyance, and that project was moved down the road a little bit farther. So by making this correction up to White Cedar Drive, it does accomplish at least part of the repair work for Borgen Road, and the big challenge for us is going to be how do we make those improvements to the Borgen Road in the future, and some of the temporary improvements that have to likely be made with respect to the ATV tracker, because we have approved that as a temporary ATV route moving forward, and so that is having a significant adverse effect on the side of the roadways of the Borgen Road. So that's on would be on the street and alley process for the future repair and reconstruct, so. Okay, anybody else have anything on that item, the proposal that's being proposed by the state of Minnesota? Okay, and just a reminder, they're also looking at Progress Park and Highway 53 and Hattrick Avenue and Highway 53 and the new County Road that probably won't be constructed to 2026 or 2025.
This one, yeah, I'm not sure. They're hoping 2025. We'll see how the funding all lines up.
Finalize, okay, thank you. Okay, anything else on this topic, on this item? Councilor Freely.
Since the school was built there, and that's kind of necessitating all of these changes, is there any responsibility on the part of the school district to be involved in this process and/or the costs that'll be incurred? Should they, or would they? I mean, I guess the point is, it's all well and fine that we have this beautiful new school up on the hill, but some of these issues that have arisen now that are costing taxpayers in the city of Virginia, what will be eventually millions of dollars were unanticipated costs to our taxpayers. And we already kicked in by providing the property available to them to build that site. So I don't know, what I'm saying is, like, you know, you talk about unfunded mandates in a sense, And that's what it's coming to fruition now, is that the city, both Evelyn and Virginia, are being called upon and incurring significant costs to unsnarl the traffic flow that was unanticipated for whatever reason when they planned this whole project. So it's a little frustrating from my standpoint in terms of like the additional costs now that are going to be borne by the taxpayers in the area for the school district project. And I guess the truth is, even if the district does become responsible in part, that's still going to be out of our pockets anyhow, because we're the residents of that school district. So if they had to pass a referendum to be able to incur some of those costs, it's going to come out of our pockets anyhow. So anyhow, it's just a statement I wanted to make. I guess it's going to be a shared cost regardless, but it's too bad that some of that wasn't foreseen prior to, so that could have been included in all of the costs that we incurred for the project in whole.
A question for you, Matt, with respect to follow-up with Councilor Freely. Was this intersection proposal change and the one on Hattrick Avenue and the one at Progress Park, was that precipitated because of the school? Or was that because the state of Minnesota, that was on their radar for reconfiguring anyway, and they accelerated that project because of the school?
I can't say for sure, Mayor. I don't recall. I think that there was some of that being discussed anyway, but I certainly think having the school there with the increased traffic necessitated the need to take a serious look at those intersections. And if anybody drives out there, we can certainly see why. If I could, one thing I wanted to add to Councilor Friedlieb's comment, just so that everybody's clear, MnDOT has been able to find funding sources to pay for the rerouting of Midway Drive, and any of the work with the exception of the trail alongside Midway Drive and Borgen Road, they've been able to get that covered under their project. So when we're talking about the school having, just to be clear, not saying they should or they shouldn't contribute, but just so everybody understands, the MnDOT project and MnDOT themselves have found funding. Normally, the rerouting of Midway Drive, that would have ended up falling back on the city as well, because technically Midway Drive is a city street. So fortunately, they've been able to do some due diligence on there and then find some extra money to be able to cover the costs of rerouting Midway Drive and reconstructing Borgen Road between the reroute and Highway 53. So the costs that we're looking at here are for the trail connection and the extra work on Borgen Road that we probably would have done regardless of the school. If White Cedar Drive was gonna be there and the school had never been there, we probably still would have thought about putting through. Maybe we wouldn't have because of the traffic volume, but something we probably would have thought about when, like the mayor referenced earlier, when we do the Borgen Road project. So just something to keep in mind.
And I think we have three options to move forward with. And first of all, is the option of approaching the school and trying to find some acquiescence from them moving forward to see what's available or what not available, or just keep that door open or close it, find out what's going on there. The other part is the IRRB, because this intersection that's being done and our responsibility is actually affected by the school that was brought forward. So there might be some money from the school trust fund that may be able to help facilitate the traffic flow as a result of the school. And the other is a DNR grant at request to extend the ATV trail moving forward. So we have options to pursue with potential grant funding to help us offset some of those costs. Yes, they're not in stone, but they are available options for us to consider. Councilor Motley.
So I live in Midway, and I'm on Borgen Road a lot, walking, biking, or actually on the ATV trail, so there's no doubt traffic has increased. I look forward to seeing this actually come to light and hopefully make it safer in Midway. I do have a question with regards to the owners of the old gas station. When you say MnDOT has covered most of the funding, is the owners, I'm curious, are they going to get hit with this reroute, or is the state covering that chunk?
Yeah, no, they won't have any direct costs affiliated with it.
Okay, because I was just thinking, I'm like, that is a big area around their area. Okay, thank you.
And the state, Mr. President, the representatives from the state did meet with the homeowner there. I did as well, brought the plans up for them to take a look at. They've been in constant conversation and communication with the owner of that property to minimize any impact they might have, and might make some adjustments to help accommodate for the private drive that they're going to have to enter into his property. Thank you. Counselor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. And Matt, I don't know if you would have any input on this, but the city, there's the 1404 property that is owned by VEDA. And the VEDA board is kind of going through some discussion phases regarding entities that are possibly interested in the property. My question is, it would be like, when I drive that every day, sometimes 3 times, 4 times a day, it's very, yes, it is congested, parking is definitely an issue, but I'm wondering if, when MnDOT is mobilized, and, you know, whether it's 2025 or 2026, could there be a road constructed, I would say, behind 1404? I just am trying to think, is that on the southern, maybe southeastern area? That would then bring traffic all the way, so if you went a road behind them, it would bring traffic to the elementary school, but then everybody, almost like creating a roundabout, everybody then would be in the same flow. Instead of making a left-hand turn to go to the high school, everybody would be flowing, and then you'd make a right-hand turn. So I don't know if that would be some kind of a discussion. I know it would be an expensive project with probably blasting through ledge rock, but I feel for safety issues, you know, if MnDOT is going to be there and Midway Drive is going to be, you know, taken on in Borgen Road, I just feel like that's a really big safety concern. When you're coming out of the school, you're actually exiting on an incline, and there's a crosswalk there, and kids almost get hit daily. They had volunteers from the school that were trying to assist with directing traffic, and one of the volunteers almost got hit, so is no longer volunteering to direct traffic. So in my opinion, it's a safety concern. I don't know if that would be a school decision or a school conversation, but if groups are up there and they're mobilized doing work and construction, could that be a conversation that could begin possibly regarding safety there?
That would really be between the school and MnDOT. That really wouldn't have anything to do with the city specifically. Keep in mind, they are also working on, the county is working on doing an extension from up by the grade school south to 37. And so if they can get that knocked out and get that done, I think once the roundabouts are in and these intersections are redone, and that road going south from the grade school down to towards Gilbert, will alleviate, that one alone, I think, will alleviate a lot of the congestion up in there. Because you're right, I'm up in there quite frequently too, and there's quite a congestion up there. So, but ultimately, your question and that would really be up to the school for traffic flow.
Thank you, Counselor Paulson. Okay, anything else? Counselor Johnson.
I would move to accept the proposed plan for MnDOT and move it forward to the council meeting.
Thank you. Motion by Counselor Johnson to approve the plan as presented today from MnDOT for the Borgen Road Exchange. Is there support?
Support.
By Counselor Motley. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item.
Next item that came out of the Street and Alley Committee meeting was the proposed changes to the public improvement and special assessment policy. In your packet, you should have a red line copy.
Thank you. Counselor Freely and I were in attendance for the Street and Alley meeting. Counselor Motley had a work commitment. So Counselor Freely, did you want to give a little synopsis of our discussion? Thank you.
Ultimately, it was in reference to Section 4 and Subdivision D of the policy, where the council authorizes reconstruction or resurfacing in the city, and those costs then are projected on the residents in that area. By statute, we're required to charge up to 20% of the cost of that project. And in that policy, we were able to, upwards of 75% of the project costs could be assessed to abutting property owners, and the consensus of the committee of that day was to reduce that down to 40%. A 60-40 split is a lot more palatable than charging somebody upwards of 75% for a project. And then we talked about the methodology by which the assessments are placed on residents. I think Matt would probably be able to speak a little more detail with regard to that methodology. I think there's GPS or GIS that's utilized in that capacity. I personally would like to see some way in which, I just don't think that the residents in that specific area are the only ones that utilize those roads and alleys that are been improved. And it's, like I said, my bill myself on Third Street was upwards of close to $8,000 for my family for the improvements on that road. That's becoming really cost burdensome for people in areas within the residents. And it seems as we should consider, or we can continue to consider in the future, some way to spread that cost throughout the city a little more evenly. I think like every resident is potentially able to drive on any improved surface on the city, rather than just the residents of that particular area where it was improved. And that would spread those costs out far wider than just on those people that are living in that area. But at this point in time, I mean, that, if you want to speak to the methodology that we utilize and why we utilize it and how we do that.
The theory behind that, Counselor Friedlieb, is that the 80% that was not covered by assessments is on the levy. So every citizen is paying 80% of that project cost, while those that are directly benefiting, the state statute says we have to charge a minimum of 20%.
I think we also asked for the elimination of part of that section where, you know, you're charged by linear foot in one area, in square foot in the other. We eliminated that, so everybody's charged the same amount of money based on.
No, we did not.
We didn't do that?
What we took out of there was we took off the average daily traffic count is what we took off.
Okay,
We did leave that on avenues, it is set by square foot, because the houses, the people that are on avenues typically aren't front-facing.
yeah, the outliers, okay.
So they're usually side-facing. So to give somebody a side-facing front footage on an avenue is going to be way more than $8,000. It would probably been about $64,000. So we try to do it a little more evenly on avenues.
Right, and we did discuss, and if you could, maybe Matt can discuss what other cities do on average with respect to how that formula works, where depending upon where you are on the street or the avenue, how that affects, is that V formation, that type of thing. I think there's one city that does a hexagonal, but if it's not done that way, the burden on those are right abutted the property, those assessments would skyrocket.
So the committee did agree to take out that average daily traffic count information, so there's not a 20, 30.
No, it's 20.
It's always a minimum of 20 up to 40%, because of that very first hearing, whatever we say the assessments are going to be, the dollar amounts we tell the residents, that's the highest we can go. We can never go lower.
Right.
So if the project costs change, we would have to redo the whole assessment hearing and change everything. So we always give them a high number at first and then come back down at the last hearing.
Yes, thank you, Britt, for that clarification. Appreciate that. Matt?
I don't really have anything to add unless anybody has any other questions on that. I think everybody covered it pretty well.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. So you did not change the methodology
No.
at all?
There was
The
no-
average daily traffic count.
Right, which is
That was-
redlined
yeah.
here.
Right.
But on the actual methodology regarding avenues and streets, it's still that zigzag or that triangular pattern.
Yes.
I'm just concerned with, when we had one resident here stating that they owned the property and then they bought a lot next door just to have the lot, and they're getting double whammied, even though there's no house on it, it's just an additional lot. So I'm concerned with how this zigzag formula is, after hearing from so many of the residents that were discussing, hey, our tract of land is it's all the same square footage. Why can't we go based on square footage and say 3 or 4 block radius? Like, I don't understand what the zigzag pattern, why that was even introduced. I don't get it.
And the question, the way that they calculate it, and Ellie's not here to tell you how the calculation is, you go from the center line of the street. And the 8th Avenue is not straight. It doesn't go straight north to south. It does have a curve. So when you go from the center line of the street, there's going to be one side that's smaller and one side that's bigger, because that's the way the center line runs, is at a diagonal. So that's how those lots are, even though you're 3 blocks long, they're not the same square footage, because the street doesn't run that way. It runs at a diagonal, a slight diagonal.
I'm talking about though, like the parcel, if you go look in their parcel code, you're gonna see how much land they own.
Yes, but you
Why
have to, but
can't
we
it
base
be-
it on square footage. So we base it from the center line of the road
Yeah, but
to a point.
why is it done that way?
That's the way it's been calculated since.
Since 1970 something, and I thought that's what was going
And
to
so I
be
did research
discussed.
many, many different assessment policies, in many different cities. And this is the very common way to do avenues, because otherwise, if you did a front footage, those people that have the 120-foot side of an avenue that gets redone is going to have to pay 120 feet of assessment.
But I think that can be redone as well.
Either it's got to be front footage or square footage. Those are the 2 options we have.
But if everybody's lot, like all those people that were here, Matt, I think we heard them loud and clear. Why is this policy, why is this assessment this way? Like, why can't it be just based on square footage? And if they
It was
get,
based on square footage. They want front footage. So that person at the very end of the lot is going to be paying for the entire assessment for that block if we did front footage.
I don't know why I'm not understanding this, but say you improve a street, not an avenue. Why can't you just say, okay, everybody within 5 blocks is going to be assessed for the at minimum 20% up to 40%? You go to St. Louis County Land Explorer, use the GIS, you take their square footage, and that's how much they're assessed. Doesn't matter where they're located
The statute
on the
says they have to
street.
directly benefit, and you have to be able to prove that their property value went up. And so those 5 blocks away, we're not going to be able to prove that. They have to be directly benefiting. So they have to be either attached to the street or abutting the street, however that may be.
Well, how is it right now? Is it directly benefiting, it's abutting?
Yes, the
But it's
avenues.
this triangular pattern.
That's the only on avenues. Triangular, it was only on avenues. Front footage is always on streets.
Okay, so is there a way to do this that makes better sense to the people who are actually going to be paying the amounts?
I think a lot of it is we haven't done a street project in 20 years. I mean, when I first started here in 99, we were doing them every single year. And we just haven't done one in a long time. So people are not used to assessments. And we've been paid off on our assessments for 10 years. So we just haven't had assessments for a long time. So it's people getting used to having to pay for the streets to be repaired, because we did 0 street projects for many years.
And just to clarify, we updated this policy in 2020, so it wasn't back in 1979. We updated this policy and approved it in 2020.
This diagram was from the 70s. We've been using the same diagram for as
Correct.
long as I.
Okay, because our last meeting, we were told it was from the 70s and there was no,
The diagrams are, the assessment methodology is from the 70s.
okay, so that's, I guess, what I'm asking about. And could we research if there is any other better method than the method we're using? Because if people do own an adjoining lot, they are getting double whammied.
Can I take a swing at trying to explain why the theory behind this and see if I can help maybe understand? Would that be okay?
Please do, and then I'm going to ask Counselor Paulson to maybe prop for a motion later on. Yes, please, Matt?
Okay, so it seems like, so to start with, when you're assessing properties, Britt said it, you have to have a direct benefit to the property, okay? And so when you look at your street network throughout town, you've got streets and you've got avenues. Typically, I'll try to, this might not be the actual category, but think about your streets as your collector streets. They're the ones that you drive out of your driveway and you drive down the road and then you hit an avenue and drive to get to McDonald's, get to 53, get to wherever you're going. So you've got your collectors that are collecting all the cars, and then you're going on to your arterials, which is the avenues, okay? So the theory behind, and right, wrong, or indifferent, this is the theory behind it, okay? The theory behind it is that when you live on an avenue, if you basically split the avenue, that block in half are probably going to go to this avenue. They're going to come out of their driveways and go to this avenue. Half are probably going to go to this avenue. Shortest route. The arterials are taking those people from the street and moving them through town. Okay, does that make sense so far? So when you're talking about a direct benefit, when you're on the street itself, that's why the front footage works, because you're on the street. The people that live on the street have a direct benefit because that's where they drive. The arterials, if you live on streets that aren't being reconstructed, so in this case, 4th, 5th, 6th Street out on 8th Avenue, they're getting a benefit because they're using that road as an arterial to get where they want to go. Yes, everybody in town probably uses that road, but they aren't getting they're not using it every day, I guess let's put it that way, or a lot. So when you do the square footage, it goes back to a couple of reasons. It's because of that, so that you incorporate the people on the streets that don't have that footage direct benefit, but also because as Britt explained earlier, if you go at straight front footage on the avenues, that's usually the long side of the property. And so then you end up getting assessed quite a bit more because it ends up being like 120 feet versus like 50 on a street, right? So that's the theory behind it. Whether you agree with it or like it or whatever, that's a whole different, right? But that's the theory behind it. And hopefully at least that helps make sense of why it is what it is. Whether it's the right policy, I don't know. That's for you guys to decide, but that's why it is the way it is.
Counselor Paulson?
Thank you, Matt. So I'm going to throw a monkey wrench in. I'm the third house in on 12th Street South. I go down my alley either way every morning. I'm using the avenue. I never use 12th Street South in front of my house. I very rarely drive that street. I drive the avenue and the alley. So I understand what you're saying. It's a direct benefit, but I mean, I think the avenues are more of a direct benefit as an arterial than a street in front of your house, unless your driveway comes out, which not many people have a driveway that comes out to the street property.
And so then, would your recommendation be to switch the avenues to front foot and the streets to square foot?
Well, it'd be more money, unfortunately, to do it that way, but I'm just telling you, my driving pattern is
Oh, I get
very
it.
different from what you just described. And some of the people that were here were telling us about their driving pattern and that they weren't in fact even using what we just did. So I don't know what I would suggest, but could we look into doing something a little bit differently?
We did, I think somebody did mention at the hearing that why don't we start at the one end of the block and make the triangle longer, so then it spreads out for everybody in the block, because then everybody in the block has access to, so it's not just halfway through, it's the whole block, everybody's paying a little bit.
And maybe that would
Maybe that's what it
be-
is. I mean, then
Maybe
it's-
whatever it
everybody
might
pays their
look
share.
like, just so that it is more of a
Yeah, because then it
pay your
would
fair
compress
share.
that triangle down at the end, and it would make it a longer, skinnier triangle. Maybe that's the solution, is that everybody pays then.
As this triangle widens and narrows, does that mean that people at the narrowest point pay the least amount?
Correct.
See, I don't know that I agree with that. That doesn't make sense to me.
There was one city I saw, I think it was Mankato, that does a hexagonal. They come up on because usually there are corner lots at the end of the avenue, so they come up halfway through the lot, they go all the way across and then halfway down again. Because then everybody's paying the same square footage, except for the corner lots, in theory, you're probably gonna get hit twice, eventually.
Right.
So
Right.
that's the theory behind that
Well,
one.
could we
can look at some
Should I
options.
make a motion then to direct staff to look into bringing up, under item 5, I guess it's a methodology, so direct staff to maybe look at different methodology
In
going forward?
anticipation of that motion, that is the motion you're making?
Yes, Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. Motion by Counselor Paulson. Is there support for that?
Support with a comment.
Yeah, support by Counselor Beyondich for comment. Further comment, Counselor Beyondich.
And I do like that concept. I know the first meeting we had, not when all the residents came, but that very first one, I distinctly remember an elderly woman in the audience that held her assessment paper. And I think she was here because she didn't know how she was going to pay that. So I think of, our elderly and how this affects them. So having it spread out evenly, I would personally prefer to, if this is one item that would have to go on a levy where everybody pays the same amount, that would be great. It sticks with me when people come and she had she was just looking around, she had that assessment in her hand. And I think of the elderly, and when they're caught in this big part of the triangle, and where are they going to come up with that? So having it spread evenly, I'm all in favor of. We all drive the streets, and I would just like to see have it spread out through all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Beyondich. So we're moving this forward for staff to do some research, determine what can we do as long as we're complying with the current laws on the books. So it has been moved and supported to direct staff to look at all other alternatives with respect to the assessment and how that methodology works, and see if there are any other alternatives that we can look at in compliance with state law. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. And then the next item Matt was kind of alluding to a second ago, item number 4, approve submitting letter of interest for funding for the Borgen Road and Highway 53 intersection improvements.
Move to approve by Counselor Freely. Is there support? By Counselor Beyondich. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Item number 5 is approve the resolution for the contract with St. Louis County for the 2024 street striping maintenance program.
So moved.
Move to approve by Counselor Motley and supported by Counselor Johnson. Is there any further discussion? Counselor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to make a note that this year when they did Main Street, and they were doing it during business hours, and customers were getting sandblasted as well as their vehicles. So if, I just would maybe ask that they could do it before or after business hours on Chestnut Street, or a block thereof, wherever the businesses are located.
They're also very late this year. They were supposed to be here earlier this summer. And so I know Jim Rossfit has been in direct contact with the contractor too, and expressing our dismay on all these things. Jim's on vacation this week deer hunting, but he did tell me that he did directly tell the contractor that how unhappy we were with them.
Yeah, it was not a good situation. So I'm fine with it. I just want to, if we could make sure that that doesn't happen next year.
We'll make sure to tell the county that we weren't happy with their contractor either.
Okay,
So
thank you very much.
Thank you. It has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? They didn't do 3rd Street South, did they? The new stuff?
No, Ms. Abbott, 2 minutes.
Okay, all right, thank you. Moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Item number 6 is review the updated memorandum of understanding with Friends of the Greenhouse. And we do have Brian Silber, our Park and Recreation Director here.
Brian Silber, our Park and Rec Director. Good morning.
Good morning. Friends of the Greenhouse brought to us a updated memorandum of understanding. The current memorandum of understanding does not end until December 31st of this year. Typically in December, council directs me to reach out to Friends of the Greenhouse to discuss a new memorandum of understanding, but the Friends of the Greenhouse beat us to the punch this time. They brought forth this memorandum, and everything in it is acceptable to me. I hope it's acceptable to you. There's really 4 changes compared to last year. 3 of them are in red in your packet here. Under item number 4, they are requesting that we add to the memorandum of understanding that donated plants will be quarantined in the north greenhouse on the east side of the greenhouse, and that the frog will maintain an accounting of the donations that are received. Under 5C, they request that we revert this back to that any watering and maintenance of the plants will be the responsibility of frog unless they request our assistance in doing so. If you remember last year, they only wanted to water on certain days. We're reverting back to what we had done in the previous years. And then also under 5I, They request that any time that we are doing maintenance, that we communicate to them what those maintenance concerns or issues are. In addition to, if they notice something, they will be communicating those to us. We're already doing this. We're just putting into writing what we're doing. The one item that is not redlined for you in here is they have requested to remove the line where the city will give them the first $500 of rental fees. They do not want any of the rental fees in the next memorandum of understanding. It's my recommendation that the council approves this memorandum of understanding that would go into effect January 1st of 2024.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Move to approve by Counselor Freely. Is there support?
Support.
By Counselor Motley. Is there any further discussion?
Quick question.
First, Counselor Freely, and then over to Counselor Paulson. Counselor
Is there
Freely.
an annual budget allotted to this group for the maintenance and preservation of plants in that facility?
No, the city does not give them funding.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Paulson.
Thank you, Brian, or thank you, Mayor. Brian, so the $500, then the city will be getting that money instead of it going to the Frog Board?
The first
And the first
$500
$500
of rentals, yes. They do not want to receive the rental income. That way, the city will receive more of those funds for maintaining the physical structure of the building.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Paulson. So it has been moved and supported to approve the FROG agreement for 2024. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Brian.
Item number 7 is an amendment for the Iron Trail Motors naming rights agreement. We've been working with the state of Minnesota in order to receive our last bit of funding that the state has provided to us for the building of the Iron Trail Motors Event Center. As you have seen in some of the emails back and forth between us and the state, we've had to make some changes to the contract because they were worried we were going to allow used car sales in the Iron Trail Motors Event Center. So we've made the changes to the agreement as requested by the state of Minnesota. The state of Minnesota has approved this, and they now need both us and Iron Trail to approve it as well.
Thank you.
I will move the naming rights agreement.
Counselor Johnson moves to approve the naming rights agreement. Is there support?
Support for discussion.
Support by Counselor Motley for further discussion. Counselor Motley.
So just so the public's aware, we had originally agreed on a 20-year contract for the naming rights with the ITMEC for $1,100,000. And my understanding is because of the state, we now have to drop that to 15 years and at a total of $825,000 and some change. So we've actually lost 5 years of payment because of the state, not because of this council.
Right, thank you. Well, the name of the individual that works for the state will not be publicly disseminated, but we're very disappointed in that process moving forward, so thank you.
Okay, and then I would hope in year 14, it looks like in this agreement that we'll be able to renegotiate with Iron Trail Motors Event Centers and try
Correct.
to make up the lost funds for the last 5 years due to the state.
And they've already reached out to us to ask to set those meeting dates, so they've already
Awesome,
want to address this too. So
thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Motley, for pointing that out. Counselor Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. So, and then just for a little clarification, was the reason we went from 20 down to 15 because of the actual change of the years of the useful life of the building? Is that kind of what precipitated the change? Because what was it at 30 and they forced us to go to what?
Yep. Mayor, if I may. So
Brian?
it was a combination of a couple of things, that being one of them. And then the other part of it, as I understood, was that they just don't like real long-term contracts on funded buildings.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it. Thank you, Mayor.
So they applied the same methodology for all the other event centers that were proffered with state money down in the Metro US Bank Stadium and all those other, apparently they have to follow the same rules? Theoretically, thank you. So it has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Item number 8 is Brian Silber again, October's 2023 Iron Trail Motors Event Center update.
Was not anticipating presenting this to you, but happy for the opportunity to present it to you. In your packet, you'll see a 3-page monthly report that I have for you. This is also available in the Park and Rec offices at the Iron Trail Motors for any member of the public that would like to review it. I'll just hit a few of the highlights. As far as building utilization goes, we had 819 hours of utilization in the building in the month of October. Now, what does that mean? Well, think about the fact that the building was actually only open for 496 hours, and we had 819 hours of utilization. That's pretty good. Keep in mind, though, that hockey is ramped up. We have 2 sheets of ice, so when both sheets of ice are being utilized, that counts for 2 user groups there. However, in getting back to the good of this, 2 sheets of ice are pretty much only utilized throughout the evening time and on weekends. So that is a whole lot of hours that we have multiple things going on. If you came to our building this past weekend, you would have seen that we had both sheets of ice being utilized and a very successful craft show going on in the building. So the building is being utilized. Another thing that I'd like to point out is that in the month of October, we invoiced customers for over $59,000 of services. In addition to, we receipted in over $116,000 of revenue in the month of October. Now, the council is interested in some specifics as far as future bookings that you've requested. In the month of October, we booked for future bookings. Those are, some of those events may have occurred in October, but most of them will occur out into the future. We booked over $27,000 of future bookings. And then the council was also interested in both concession stand revenue and our catering package revenue. Concession stand revenue was not good this past month. However, the concession stand was only open for 3 days, 2 of those being youth hockey events, one of them being the Minnesota Wilderness game. And we also had to ramp up our concession stands by purchasing all of the supplies that do have expiration dates on them. So we pretty much stocked up for the beginning of the season and only had one real big event that we could see revenue recapturing. So we did actually see a loss this month of $198. This next month, we should see that number get much more into the positive. We expect your beginning of for startup that your profit is going to be less than it is once you have all of your supplies. Typically, you'll see the last month of concession stand operations will have the largest profit because we're not purchasing product, we're scaling down on what we have on hand. Catering packages, you'll see those did very well again this month, actually better this month than they did last month, netting us a $2,723 profit for the month. A couple of other things that I would like to point out is this month we also started registration for our Winter 100 Challenge. This was an idea that we came up with to utilizing the walking track and to get people active and engaged throughout the winter in our community. We were hoping for 50 people to register, and we're right now probably pushing about 170 people. So very exciting. The impact that it has had is yesterday morning when I arrived to work, I pulled up to the building and thought, oh my goodness, did I forget that we have an event going on today? There are so many cars in the parking lot. I didn't forget that we had an event going on. We actually had 35 to 40 walkers on the walking track at 7:30 in the morning. Very excited to see the public utilization of the building. We've also had another idea for a program. We've reached out to the school district to see if they would like to partner with us, doing a fourth period dance, choosing a Friday evening or a Saturday evening home game, partnering with one of the school organizations and doing a ticket split with them. Our challenge in doing that, while there are a good number of Friday evening or Saturday afternoon evening hockey games, many of those games coincide with our ballroom already having been booked. So we really have 2 dates that we were able to look at. So at this point, we are looking at a date in January to do that. If there's not a school group that's interested in doing it, our staff is looking at doing a back to high school fourth period dance and having it be a 70s, 80s, and 90s themed dance so that all of us in this room can go back to school, and maybe we won't have to spike the lemonade or the punch bowl. We would be able to have an actual bar in place for that dance. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer those questions, or if there's any other format that you would like to see in this report, I'd be happy to modify it for in the future to give you the information that you are looking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Just one quick question. You may not have this. What has been our bar revenue? From the sale of alcohol? What do you have a handle on what a revenue stream was in that regard?
We receive 10% of all alcohol sales, so it really depends on the event as far as what that revenue is for the facility.
Maybe next time you might have that figure.
Okay,
Thank you.
I'd be happy to.
Thank you, Brian. Counselor Beyondich.
You, since I've been niggling you for a long time. I like how you laid this out with the vending machines, the staffing hours, the benefits, and I like how you broke this down. It's easy for me to understand, so thank you for the extra work.
You're welcome.
And I want to also say to you, Brian, I appreciated going to that Wilderness hockey game and having the opportunity to participate in the opening ceremonies, and taking a young hockey player out there was a huge experience for her. It was really great. And the fact that you had both concession stands open, and it was necessary to do so. And I know it took some negotiations and some moving around and blacking out some dates or whatever case for that, but it was imperative that both those were open, and they were both had a lot of activity in each one. So I appreciate that. And then my other question is that when the police officer is there for these events, are they paid in an overtime format for that, for having to be at these events? They are. And that's billed back to the Eintracht Memorial Event Center? Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions. Anyone else? Thank you, Brian.
Yep, and if you enjoyed the Wilderness game, you are sure to enjoy this weekend of hockey as the Rock Ridge Wolverines open up their regular season schedule. We have both a Friday night and a Saturday afternoon game featuring the girls hockey team. So please come out and support the girls hockey team as they start their run to state this year.
Go Wolverines. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it. Next item, please.
Thank you. Item number 9 comes from the Buildings and Grounds Committee held on 10/23/23. Counselor Johnson.
Counselor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. The beginning of the meeting was Jody Vest from Uptown Mall had come and has received some support from the IRRB and the city. But as we've noticed with our Public Safety Center, costs have increased and there's been some challenges with them. And basically the committee decided or is requesting that we approve staff to work with Rockrest to seek funding for the renovation of the Uptown Mall to cover their anticipated funding gap, and I will make that motion.
Thank you. Motion by Counselor Johnson to direct staff to seek additional funding sources for the Rock Step Uptown Mall project to bridge their funding gap. Is there support?
Support for discussion.
By Counselor Motley, support. For discussion, Counselor Motley.
After hearing from Counselor Paulson earlier about the IRRB giving $20 million to a marijuana plant, can we reach out to them for additional funding to try to get this project with the mall going forward?
I believe we are doing so. They have invested significantly in the phase one, I think in phase two of the mall project, and they are acutely aware of the need for the additional funding.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Motley. Has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries.
That was the only action step from the meeting. There was also some discussion about a building on the 500 block of Chestnut Street. There's some potential businesses that might be going in, would like to go in there. That was for informational purposes. We also gave some direction to Brian Silver about potential negotiations for junior hockey franchise fees and what that would look like for the building. And then I had to step out after that, so I would defer to Britt for the rest of the updates for the meeting.
Thank you,
Some
Councilor Johnson.
informational.
Okay, thank you. Any other information disseminated, Britt?
To give an update on the vacation of the properties in the Public Safety Center? Jenny has information.
Thank you. Jenny?
Mayor,
Thank
yep,
you.
we did give a very brief, or I gave a very brief update on the Public Safety Center subdivision split, working towards getting that to legal descriptions in the works. So that's about it on that, but just getting you an update on that.
Okay, thank you. I see a lot of activity there now. Looks like they're going full steam ahead. And am I correct in based on the information from TNT and the others, Carl Sanderson, that it's anticipated or that all the demolition will be done on the remaining 19 or 20 structures that are there, and that it'll be, the debris will be removed, and it'll be a flat surface ready for a shovel in the ground by December 1st. Is that correct, Jenny?
Thank you, Mary. That's my understanding, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. All right.
Next item on the agenda is item number 10, and this comes from the Personnel Committee meeting that was held on 11/1/2023, and Councilor Paulson is the chairperson.
Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. This was pretty straightforward. It's kind of came forward from the state of Minnesota, some changes regarding basically safe and sick time, and it was outlined, Britt sent us in our packet, so it's kind of one of those mandated things. And so staff is going to be working with AFSCME to make sure that our contract language matches the new updated safe and, what is it called? Safe and sick policy that came to us from the state of Minnesota. So that's kind of one of the main things. And then, what else did we meet about that? I don't know if that's in our packet.
Talked about staffing at the Iron Trail Motors Event Center. We're going to come back to another meeting to talk more about it. We do have an internal vacancy for a permanent position that at this time we don't know that we're going to fill. So the Personnel Committee is going to come back within that 45-day window and determine if we're going to fill it or not.
Do we need a motion from personnel to move the earned sick and safe negotiations moving forward?
I'll move that.
Councilor Paulson moves to move this forward. Is there support?
Support.
By Councilor Johnson. Further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. This might be a good time just to take 5 minutes. Take a 5-minute break at the request. Okay, let's get back to business. Okay, thank you. We took a short break for those who are listening in at home and those who are in the audience. Let's move on to the next item on the agenda, please, Britt.
Thank you. Item number 11 is approve the resolution for the TZD or Toward Zero Death Grant from October 1st, 2023 to September 30th, 2024.
So moved.
Move to approve by Counselor Johnson, supported by Counselor Beyondich. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries.
Item number 12 is approve the resolution for the purchase of NeoWater FX 300 for the wastewater treatment plant.
So moved.
Move to approve by Counselor Freely. Is there support?
Reluctant support.
Reluctantly supported by Counselor Johnson, and reluctantly agree with Counselor Johnson. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. Pam?
I do have a little update on that.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe some hope in the future. But Hawkins, I talked to Carol at the wastewater plant regarding this, and because we had just ordered it. So there's about 3 weeks left in our current bulk tank. And so this will be coming in plenty of time. But she said Hawkins is now doing a jar testing and sampling on the ferric blend, that they may be able to get another chemical that will work to get to the 0.07 that's required, but it does still have to go through the MPCA for approval. So they're working on that kind of stuff. So hopefully in the future we can.
A chemical that would be more inexpensive, but it's just as effective?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Any further discussion? Did we vote on that? Or? Hearing and seeing.
Yes, you did.
Yes, we did. Okay, thank you. Next matter.
Item number 14 is review and approve the resolution for change order number 1 from Envirobate for the City of Virginia Fall 2023 demolition house asbestos removal project in the Public Safety Center area in the amount of $19,900. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped 13.
let's go-
Yeah, back up one.
let's take
Review
one
and approve
step
the
back.
annual adjustment for the CPI for the contract with People Service. And I'm assuming Pam or Sherry has this information.
Yeah, I don't like this. Sherry?
Yes, I see that. And I did already budget roughly around that amount, 28.5 is what I budgeted.
CPI is 5%?
I'm sorry, what? No.
I didn't hear you.
$28,500 a month, up from 24, what is it? 27.
It was 27, now it's 28.5.
Yep.
All right, thank you. Anyone want to pull the trigger on this one?
I will move the adjustment as it's part of the contract that goes until 2026.
To be significantly renegotiated at that time. Motion by Counselor Johnson, is there support? Support by Counselor Freely. Is there any further discussion? Counselor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there a way we could reopen this contract and renegotiate that right out of it?
Brian, loaded question.
Yeah. So in contract, we always say anything is possible. However, because this contract is in force at this point, there'd have to be an agreement to reopen and renegotiate. So that's, we could reach out and ask the question, but I trust we might not like the answer.
Well, is it worth a try just to see and, just let them know that, we're currently having a hardship right now, with our own budget processing or processes for 2024? And could we amend the contract to take that to take the consumer price index out? So that it would just be stated, it'd be the same as it is, just removing that one piece of language.
We can ask to do that, and I think it would be prudent for us to do so. The issue for me as well is not only the CPI index, but before it was following the ASME union contract where you're getting I don't like that either. It's a private contractor. You should be negotiating it separately, separate contract, devoid from tying into any other type of index or any other type of labor agreement. So are you looking for a motion to have staff reopen that?
I think we have a motion on the floor, then I'll make.
Is there a motion on the floor to do that? No, to approve. Okay. Yeah, we haven't approved the annual adjustment yet. We're just in the discussion phase of that.
Okay, so then I would move to direct staff.
We have to vote on this first.
Oh, that's what I'm
We have
asking.
to move and accept it right now. Moved and supported, but. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed?
No.
No. Roll call, please.
Motley,
No.
Friedlieb,
No.
Paulson,
No.
Yondich,
No.
Johnson,
Yes.
Aaronzelli. Yes. Coffee.
No. Motion fails. Now your motion.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I would make a motion to direct city staff to, and I suppose our city attorney, to reach out to People Services to have a discussion regarding the contract and the current language with the CPI language.
Okay, thank you. Moved by Counselor Paulson. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Counselor Motley. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Now on to item 14, review and approve the resolution for change order number 1 for Envirobate for the City of Virginia Fall 2023 demolition house asbestos removal project in the Public Safety Center area in the amount of $19,900.
Is this within the budget?
It is within the budget still, and as if you, in your packet, it does explain by the email from Taylor Dickinson that Braun Intertech forgot to do this house or put it on their list. So Braun had agreed to do the testing on it for free or at their cost because they did forget it. But then for us to remove the asbestos-containing material, this is what the change order is for.
All right, okay, thank you.
So moved.
Move to approve by Counselor Motley. Is there support?
I'll support for discussion.
Support by Counselor Freely for discussion. Counselor Freely.
Needless to say, these types of costs that we incur on change orders are always frustrating, and particularly when it seems as though it was an oversight on the part of the contractor themselves. And although, like, this is not, the total cost of this contract is $116,000, something like that. So but it is a significant increase percentagely for the contract. And, you know, I just wonder, can you negotiate with them? Can they eat part of that, I guess? That's how I look at it. Like, why should they not have to at least eat a portion of that rather than us have to re-up the entire 19.9 when it was an oversight on the contractor's part? I don't know. It's just for discussion. It frustrates me that when they didn't do their due diligence in making sure that that additional property was covered under that contract, that's on them, in my opinion, not on us, but, so, that's just my opinion. Thank you.
Counselor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. So could I ask, so Kraus Anderson is a construction manager at risk, is that correct? And were they the ones that were overseeing this process?
No.
So it's their subcontractor, which is Envirobate. And did Envirobate not know how many homes were in the tract of land or the tracts of land?
They were given a list of addresses and from Braun, from the people we had hired to do the asbestos inspections and hazardous material inspections. And Braun's list had 124 8th Street
Twice.
South as one house, And there really was 2 houses on that parcel using the same address.
And how many times has Enviro Bait been to the actual site itself?
Probably quite a few, but they probably haven't been to that house because they had no need to go to that house until Braun said it was cleared to go.
And so they have done all asbestos removal for all the properties thus far?
Correct.
And what is the average cost per property for that abatement?
It depends on how much asbestos they have. Some are worse than others, and of course, this one, the entire siding is asbestos.
Yep, so what would be like an average cost per, because you just said it was 116,000 total?
16.6.
116,600 for how many properties?
I can tell you is for 2,900 square feet of asbestos-containing siding, 5 elbows, 20 or linear feet of pipe insulation, and 400 square feet of floor tile.
Yeah, but how many other properties did they remove asbestos for?
About every single one of them.
So how many
This
was,
is the second phase, so this 116 was for the second phase of houses we've had.
and how
removed.
many houses in the second phase have they then
I
done
have to find the
this?
contract from last council meeting, I don't.
Okay, I guess I want to know what I understand what you're saying, but I agree with Counselor Friedlieb. If they didn't inspect what they were doing, I don't necessarily know that should be on the city's back to do a change order. And it's a change order in the amount of $19,000. And if you had, even at, let's see, say it's 24, I don't, how many houses were there, like 40-something? So just take half of that 24, that's only $4,800 per home, so 19 grand, that's way high.
Not all of them needed the work. So there's it depends on how much asbestos there is on that property. I'm trying to find the bid package here.
And then is that taking Kraus Anderson's percentage?
No.
Because typically when a sub goes through a general, the general marks it up.
Kraus Anderson does not have a percentage on this one. This is just exactly what it.
Yeah, I'm not going to vote to approve this. I just think that, they should have caught what they were doing. And now it's a $19,000 increase, so I'm not going to vote for that. Thank you.
They charge is $155 per worker per hour, $160 per supervisor per hour, $2,000 mobilization, and $160 per glove bag.
Was that information put forth before us or is that something that Kraus Anderson decides and we don't get to see that?
But we approved this agreement with Envirobate.
Envirobate and that language within? And then could we see what the $19,000 breakout is? Is that additional mobilization charge or? Anyway, I'm not going to vote to approve this because I think they should have caught it themselves. Thank you.
Okay, the question that you had, Counselor Paulson, it is on the resolution, the removal at 124 8th Street South building, which includes 2,900 square feet of asbestos-containing siding, 5 elbows, 20 linear feet of pipe insulation, and 400 square feet of floor tile. That was the breakdown. So it has been moved. Or did you have any more comments there, questions or concerns, Councilor Paulson? Okay, thank you. Moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? First, we'll go around the room, Councilor Friedlieb, and then back over to Councilor Beyondich. Councilor Friedlieb.
So you said mobilization costs were included in that? I would suggest then, since they're already on site, they should at least take that cost off.
That mobilization cost I mentioned was the original quote we approved two meetings ago.
And I guess that's what I'm saying is they submitted a bid, we agreed to that amount, and their paperwork or their oversight resulted in them potentially losing $19,000 on the project. I don't see how that's on us. And I'm willing to negotiate a lower price on that, whatever that might be. Personally, I don't think we should be held responsible for their oversight, because we already agreed to a price to have this accomplished. And, oh, geez, we just found out there was an additional house on an address we didn't know about. Well, then you take it down in the process of what you're doing on behalf of what we were willing to pay for. So I'm frustrated with that too. I think there should be some further negotiation to reduce that cost in a percentage basis of how many homes have been done versus how many are left to do or whatever. So thank you.
Has this work already been done?
House, no. No, for this one, no.
I'm sorry.
For this house, no, it's not been done.
Okay, thank you.
They're waiting for us to approve it. That could be the flip side, is if we don't approve this, they may just let it sit and the house can't be torn down until this is all done.
Thank you.
But I could definitely reach out to them and ask them for, a decrease, that they take some ownership in their
And if I might, I know we have contingency costs put in place to cover these potentials, but so should they, is how I look at it. So should they. They should have contingencies put in place as a contractor for things that are unforeseen that they might come upon. So I'm frustrated about that. Change orders are painful.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Beyondich.
Thank you, and I'm in total agreement with that. The city doesn't, we hire people to do their job, and for this could have been avoided. I mean, I can see a contingency fund for unforeseen things that come up, but I don't believe our taxpayers should pay for something that was overlooked. So I would be in agreement of negotiating or talking to them that they take some of this blame also. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Beyondich. I concur. I don't think they should be paying it. We should be paying it either. But I think I don't want to delay this moving forward. They've already mobilized TNT to turn down all this. This could be week, 2 weeks down the road before we get that accomplished. So I'm going to support moving forward with it, with the understanding that we reach out to them and try to find some kind of reasonable solution. But I don't want to hold this up any further. I understand the angst, but everybody else have the same angst as everyone here who have expressed that issue. So Counselor Motley.
I'd be willing to edit my motion. Pam, what was my motion? Just, can you repeat?
Moved by Counselor Motley, supported by Counselor Friedlieb, to approve the resolution for change order number 1 from EnviroBait for the City of Virginia, 2023 demolition house asbestos removal project in the public service area in the amount of $19,900.
Did we ever put in there pending, like negotiations to see if we can get that lowered? Or is that too much in one motion?
But we're approving the amount in the motion. Brian?
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. At this point, procedurally, what we may be doing is just moving it forward to the city council meeting for final approval. So at this point, I mean, the motion could be to move that, to move that issue to the council agenda and direct staff in the meantime to reach out to try and make some headway. That way, we're not committing to finally approving it or giving the indication that we're going to approve it prior to having those negotiations.
Would it be your recommendation to take back my motion then on approving the 19 and then making a new motion, Brian?
We're making a motion moving forward, and that we can direct staff to reach out to these people right before that, and we don't have to approve it at the next council meeting. The motion could stand as proposed.
Okay, so I don't need to edit it at all. Okay, thank you.
So it has been moved and supported to approve the change order for this project, for this particular house and building, in the amount of $19,900 for final approval or discussion, final approval at the next council meeting. So we have time moving forward. So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. And so do we need another motion to direct staff to reach out?
I was a no.
Counselor Paulson makes that motion.
No, I was a no.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The vote.
I apologize.
It's okay.
No, okay. Roll call, please, Pam.
Friedlieb,
Aye.
Paulson,
No.
Beyondich, Johnson,
Yes.
Aaronzelli, Huffy,
Yes.
Motley.
Yes.
The motion passes 5-2. And that'll be moved to the council meeting for additional consideration. Counselor Brian,
Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Lindsay.
Yep, and then it would be appropriate to have a secondary motion directing staff to reach out to try to negotiate that number ahead of the meeting.
I'll make that motion, please.
Okay, Counselor Mossman makes the motion for staff to reach out, and supported by Counselor Freely. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 15 is at one of our two of our budget meetings, we talked about legal services and doing an RFP because we haven't done one for a while for our legal services to ensure that our prices are where they're in line with industry standards. Put a copy in your packet for you to review.
So the clarification on this motion is, or the RFP is for all legal representation?
I'm sorry, civil and general.
Pardon?
Civil in general.
Civil and general, but not,
Criminals already, but we already have an agreement with
we have
Lawson.
the criminal, that's what I want to clarify, the criminal one's already in place. Okay. Counsel?
So moved.
Move to approve by Counselor Motley. Is there support? Is there support?
I'll support for discussion.
Support by Counselor Paulson for further discussion. Further discussion, Counselor Paulson.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So, Britt, on the last page, I believe it, has this already been gone in publications?
No, that's where we would list it.
Oh, okay, so that's just the proposed listing of where it would go? Okay, I just wanted to make sure we hadn't,
That's where we advertised last time.
okay,
And I suspect that's what we'll do again in the same places.
okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Beyondich?
How often do we do this?
We've just been going year to year with Trenti for a while.
Do we ever put a time frame on it so it's a reminder?
Sure, we could do it, when we get to the point of entering an agreement with them, I think we left it at, the way this reads is that whenever we select a firm, we can sit down and talk about that
Okay,
negotiation.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Here, Counselor Freelieb?
So we're doing this to save money, hopefully, or to
Correct.
just maintain quality services?
To see what the costs are, what's,
What the costs are?
hopefully save money.
Well, you know, the
We're not spending
reality,
any more than we're already spending, but yeah.
my guess is every proposal is going to be more than, including the existing one, will be more than what we're paying currently. Why would it not be in this day and time? So, anyhow, I'm not going to oppose it. I'm just like saying, I don't think we're going to save money by doing this.
Thank you, Counselor Freelieb. I see the need from time to time, no matter what kind of contract they have, to review and see what could become available. But I agree with you, Counselor Freelieb, about the costs associated with this. We have a legal team on staff right now, and it's X amount of dollars. There's not been a request for additional funding, it has been a request for more money. That could change. So there you have it. It's been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Counselor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. So if these RFPs come forward and they are higher, we are not obligated to take them, are we?
We are.
We're not.
So then we could go out for more then.
Got it. Thank you.
So say for the sake of argument, law firm X is representing city Y and for X amount of dollars, and then the RFPs come out, the proposal comes higher. Then we reject all those, we can't reject all those proposals and then look for another opportunity elsewhere? That's kind of the way it'll go.
Strictly came out of a budget discussion, was just to make sure that our budget costs have been analyzed, and we've been looking at it. And like Counselor Beyondich mentioned, we haven't done this in a while. So it was just strictly just to,
Okay, thank you. It has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Roll call, please.
Paulson,
Aye.
Beyondich,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Aaronzelli. Yes. Huffy,
No.
Motley,
Yes.
Freely.
No.
Motion passes 5-2. Thank you.
thank you. Item number 16 is a travel request for one of our new mechanics, Mason Isaacson, to attend the Commercial Vehicle Inspector class November 8th through the 9th, 2023, Mendota Heights, at a cost of $475.55. The reason this is such a late, very short notice request is that Mason just got off probation, so now he can attend training because they don't usually allow them to go while they're on probation. And if he does not take this class in November, he can't get until March. So we really would like to get him into this November class.
Move to approve by Counselor Freely. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Counselor Motley. Is there any further discussion? Counselor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. Britt, is this cost been budgeted already within Jim Rosfit's budget?
Yeah, the cost, if we had to go to an outside firm to do our vehicle inspections, our DOT inspections, it would be way more than this $475. So this is part of their travel.
But it has been budgeted and we're
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, it's Chris, do you know how long their licenses are? Is it 3-year trainings?
Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Paulson has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Item number 17 is budget fiscal year 2024 solid waste and recycling enterprise fund.
Okay, thank you. I see we have Chris in the background who has done a
Chris
significant
here.
amount of research. Britt?
I tried to incorporate this as much as I could, and there's a lot of information in your packet, so I understand if we can't make a decision today. The solid waste fund has been out of whack for a little while. To lack of a better term, we've been subsidizing with general fund for a few years, and we've been really working since Chris had moved down and Jim Rosfit had started. We've been really working on trying to figure out the garbage charges and exactly how much we're billing, what are we billing, who we're billing, and how we're billing. So Chris had been working with the garbage truck drivers on solidifying commercial routes and how many cans do they actually have at these businesses and how many pickups per week, because the commercial rates by pickup and by can. So we've just solidified that, and Chris found numerous places that were not being charged the correct dollar amount, so it's quite a hefty increase per month. We have adjusted those. However, as we were working with public utility staff, we realized that we are totally missing a fee on our utility bills. The county charges us not just tipping fee, they also count us a county solid waste fee, and that solid waste fee is $385,000 for '23. What we've been charging on the utility bills is the city garbage fee, the county garbage fee. Some reason, I don't know when or how or why, it got changed to what the tipping fee is supposed to be. So the tipping fee is the county garbage fee, and then the solid waste municipal tax. We can't get rid of that solid waste tax that's charged by state statute. That dictates how that's done. The way the county charges us for that solid waste charge for residential, it's an $85 per year for every residential property in Virginia. They tell us how many the houses there are, and we pass it on to the residents. For commercial, they do it by market value, and they have a list, and they tell us how they figured out that commercial value, that market value, and how they figured out that rate. So we have been missing that commercial, that $385,000, we haven't been getting that back in from the residents. We've just been paying it to the county, subsidizing it ourselves with their garbage fund. So we have some decisions we need to make. We certainly could continue doing that, but that puts us at the point on the budget that at least the depreciation, if not more, is always going to have to be covered by the general fund. Or we have to look at correcting this and adding the fourth fee in, basically. The tipping fees we increased in 2020, and thankfully, I think we're almost to the penny exactly what we pay at the county scales is what we're taking in on tipping fees. It's almost exactly 100%. It's the county garbage fee, solid waste fee that we're missing.
Counselor Motley?
So if we were to correct this, is this hypothetically, would that $385,000 being the plus to the general levy for 2024?
It would mean we would not transfer in any money, would not plan to transfer in any money to the solid waste fund for 2024.
So would this hypothetically help us with setting the levy with an additional $385,000?
It definitely would.
So this is a huge
This has
help
been
for
what
us?
we've been trying to do all along, is figure out how not to subsidize the Iron Trail Motors Event Center, the Tennis for All, the golf course, all these funds that we've been subsidizing. And it's been, I know, and I do have Chris from the Public Works Department here, it's been driving us crazy since Chris and Jim started on there, is why is this garbage fund not making the money? And well, we finally figured out what it was. Like I said, it took the utilities and Chris and I all to get together on the phone saying, what is going on here? And we determined where we're missing that piece.
So by not transferring this out, if that's what the council chooses, like fixing this going forward, hypothetically speaking, how much percent can we possibly lower the levy just with $385,000 added to the general levy? Just in a blink of an eye, just guess.
Sherry?
Okay, just
Am I overthinking?
caution here. This is an enterprise fund. So what happens with the enterprise funds? The general fund, any surplus in there, any little extra cushion we have in there goes to subsidize the enterprise fund, which now you're getting down to bone on bone. So if you're gonna cut the levy anymore, I'd cut it in the general fund.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. And that's going to be reflective in the monthly bills as well,
Correct,
right?
correct. And I'm positive that if I go back to an audit, I'm probably 100, and I will say this with a 99.9% certainty, that if we went back to the audit, we will see the solid waste fund owes the general fund money. So if it gets to the point where the solid waste fund is making money, where it's actually positive, it actually owes the general fund money that it needs to put back. So there is the draw to that too. In the proposed rates that what I was thinking about and discussing with Chris and Sherry and the utilities, was that we changed the current county garbage rate that you see in your bill and actually call that the tipping fee. That's what it's supposed to be, is the county tipping fee. So make that clearer to people, that this is what that was supposed to be for. And then we add the new county solid waste fee onto the bills. And we'll have to determine how we want to deal with the residential, if we just break that portion out of that current city charge, or how we're going to do that. But for the commercials, we can go to each property and we know what their estimated market value is based on the county's list that they give us. So we can determine annually what their garbage rate's going to be.
Right, and so it'll be broken down so everybody understands in their bill where that money's going.
Correct. When back years ago, before they used the system we called Cassell, there was a very limited space and you couldn't put a lot of letters. Now we can call it whatever we want. We can call it county solid waste fee, county tipping fee, Minnesota state tax on solid waste. I mean, we can expand these names a little more so they're a little clearer for people to understand.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. So Britt, can we go to it's, I guess, page 88, and it's a commercial garbage rate chart? Is this what the county bases the charge to the city on?
On the estimated market values.
So that's their,
if you go over to the very left, the properties that are estimated value at 1,000 to 50,000 are charged $80 per year. The city's charged $80 per year for solid waste fees from the county.
and then those are the fees that you're saying have not been passed on?
Correct.
Okay, now, this might not make anyone very happy, but if we looked at our last sales book, the EMVs for downtown, no, they weren't. They went way down.
Fees went up.
Yep, and so can we do something different based on those? I mean, like, they went way down for Chestnut and a block, I think, north and south. So do we have to base it on the EMV, or can we just come up with a rate that makes sense?
We sure can. We know what the county's charging us per EMV, but we can certainly figure out a way to make this work for us. The target goal is they're charging us $385 for this year. And we get that notice every March, what they're gonna charge us for that year. So it's something we're gonna have to look at every single year and figure out
Right.
how are we gonna do this.
And then are we specifically talking on that 385,000 for commercial?
Nope, it's both residential and
Residential
commercial.
and
Yep.
commercial?
Yep.
So we will have to have a discussion regarding residential
Residential.
rates and commercial.
Correct.
But we have not increased the commercial rates in a very long
In
time.
a very long time. We were planning to do it
Because
in
of COVID
2020. We
hardship.
had the discussion and then
Yep.
everything shut down. And we
Yep.
thought the businesses can't absorb that. They're not even open right now, so we stopped that discussion. And actually, I think we did a garbage rebate for a couple businesses at that time
I
during COVID.
remember that. Yep. Okay, so that's something that we can then have a discussion going forward.
Definitely.
And my recommendation would be that we don't go based on the EMV, because those EMVs went down for a lot of retail and
Right.
commercial areas in Virginia. That, I don't know what you'd base it on, but I mean,
And I
that's
do
for
know,
discussion.
they do tell us the number of parcels they're using, so maybe we do it on a basis like that, that we'll figure out, yeah, we can work on something together.
And then the next question that I had, I was reading that about they're picked up 6 days a week. So are you saying that a garbage truck goes down to every commercial place 6 times a week?
Only on downtown, this is where I'm gonna need Chris to come help me up. This is the downtown businesses are paying $36.50 for 6 times a week pickup.
That's a lot. And I don't know, Chris, if you can answer this, are they full daily that they are?
Can you come up to the?
Would you come up, please,
Sorry.
Chris? Thank you very much. Turn the light to green. Chris Marafioriti from Public Works.
So
Chris?
the Chestnut Street is actually, they're getting the most service. They're getting charged the least amount.
At least.
And they're getting attention every single day, basically priority.
And I guess my question is, do they need that attention every day? Do they need to be dumped every day?
That's what I asked, and the driver said that there's probably not a chance they can miss a day because
Okay.
then they're too heavy.
So it really is a daily thing. I can't believe I don't see them come down every day.
Start quite early.
But I would like to see, I mean, that has to increase. If we're picking up 6 times in 1 week, that has to go up. And I don't know how you want to, I mean, we're asking every other department to, break even with concessions or whatever. I think that this has to be sustaining for it to be justified, and maybe people will, I don't know. Do you think people are dumping garbage though too, like just people in general?
Yes.
So that's,
Yes,
so that is happening.
yes.
A lot.
But commercial rates based off of, I mean, even like in my letter, I just suggest if each business got charged for 1 can at 1 pickup a week, which is $60 a month, because some of the other businesses are being charged more than that, and they're only getting 1 pickup a
One
week.
pickup.
So it's not really even, it's not fair.
Yeah, well, I think it needs to be fair, but interesting, I didn't really realize there's people dumping things in the garbage can, which would make it a daily, maybe that's why it needs to be daily. And I mean, like for us, we take garbage out maybe once a week. I don't have a lot of garbage, and that's just our small business, but I had no idea that they were doing 6 times a week. So, but I definitely agree with you, it needs to be increased, and I don't know if we want to have a separate meeting on that, but I think that
Yeah,
it's time, because it's too expensive. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Paulson. If you could hang on just for a moment, Chris, we might have another question for you. Councilor Beyondich.
You. Not really a question, but yes, people do dump. I go to work early. I do see the garbage truck every day, so they do go every day early in the morning. But we have a gentleman who is very conscientious, who is in the alley, that he has tried to capture license plates, because pickups will literally pull up and dump a whole pickup load in the dumpster. So I know the building next to us is vacant right now. We don't produce more than 1 bag a week, but our cans are full. So they are being utilized by others that share.
Yeah, and Chris, if you could just verify this. So we have residents who share a garbage can. We'll give you an example. The alley of 300 block of 10th Street South, because I just got a recent picture sent to me yesterday about that. And I've been referring the people to you. And the garbage, the refuse collector would dump the garbage, and that next day it'd be full. I mean full. You'd say, well, what do we do? It's overflowing. We can't fit anything more in there. So what I do? Call Public Works, talk to Chris. She'll alleviate that problem for you. Then they send a driver out and empty the garbage once again. Not necessarily, that refuse is not necessarily being generated by that individual, but they rent the properties, they're moving in and out, they're dumping everything, and they're including all their leaves, including, their mattresses and all those kind of things. And I watched the refuse driver the other day, had to get out of the truck, pull things out of the garbage so he could empty it. So this happens on a regular basis. So that's another issue for discussion as well. Thank you for that, Councilor Beyondich. Okay, do we need any action at this point in time?
No, there's one other thing I do want to talk about though too. So solid waste is also.
Thanks, Chris.
Also includes the recycling. I put in your packet under page 101, I believe. The tonnage through 2022. I don't have 23s yet, of course, because we're still in 23. But we've been tracking since I've been here the tonnage of solid waste and recycling. As you'll see, recycling has decreased. From in 2016, we were doing almost 642 tons, and now we're down to 422. The garbage it did go up during COVID, in 2021. We did kind of suspect that, but it did decrease again back in 2022, back down to almost normal rates. I did talk to Dave Fink at St. Louis County. He's the solid waste person over there, and I mentioned to him that if we were to go away from curbside recycling, how upset would the county be? And he said, I'm not very upset at all, because we're one of the only cities that still do it. And that while they've seen the decrease from our trucks, they do say our drop site is also very, very, one of the busiest ones around here. I did mention also, I suspect it's not a lot of Virginia residents, it's a lot of other people also polluting our recycling site, but recycling's recycling, and we're happy they're doing it. So we did talk further about maybe a second recycling site on North Side, if we were to get rid of our curbside recycling, might be prudent, because we do know the drop-offs are working. Just a food for thought, we do allocate 2 staff members to recycling only. I mean, that's the only reason why they're there. It's all they do is recycling. Maybe we look at getting rid of that curbside recycling program, or maybe we look at going down to 1 week a month, or something a little different, just to try to save some costs again.
Councilor Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. I guess, you put the data in for us to see. It's not being utilized as much as it was, as well as it's not only just employee expense, but it's vehicle expense, fuel, maintenance, the whole 9 yards. So I would be comfortable having a conversation with phasing that out completely, and maybe seeing what the county would suggest up on North Side for an additional drop-off. But at this point, it's interesting that Virginia is one of the only cities left doing it, and it is a pretty significant expense if you add everything up. So I would be willing to have a conversation about actually phasing it out completely.
One point to note too is that the county used to pay us to have our recycling program. We used to have a contract with them, and right after COVID 2021, they chose not to renew that contract with us anymore, so we don't get payments anymore from the county either. So we used to get paid to do this, and now we don't. And I suggest, we'll have to have a conversation if the 2 staff members that are in recycling, I would suggest, and Sherry and I have talked about this, putting them back into public works. So we not eliminate, there would be no layoffs. It would be put back in the general population, basically. So keep them working, just not in that capacity anymore.
Yeah, and I think we're going to have another budget meeting here soon, and as part of that budget discussion, you'll have a mechanism or a method in which to accomplish that.
Yep. Yep,
next budget meeting.
and Counselor Paulson's absolutely correct. We do need a new recycling truck. You know, those are gonna be at least $300,000. I mean, so there's just these costs that are coming that we need to think about because it just keeps going down every single year. We've tried marketing, I've tried radio ads, I've tried Facebook posts, I've tried mailers. I've done so many different things to try to increase cycling and nothing's worked yet.
And I don't want to use an analogy that would be of concern to St. Louis County, with all due respect, but when this recycling program started, and the incentive was to implement a rather significant program in order to recycle, you know, for reducing the carbon footprint, all those things, and then all of a sudden, after we established that program, and the incentive from the county was to give us a stipend for the amount of recycling we did, we no longer get that stipend. So I don't understand the impetus for that, but I think we have to do something with the recycling program, and I think we should take a look at phasing it out as well. So we can make adjustments and look forward to the recommendations by you, Britt, and by Sherry moving forward to our next budget meeting. So thank you. Anybody else with respect to this part of the solid waste? Well, Chris is gone, but thank you for her hard work moving forward, and all of a sudden identifying that for some reason or other that fell through the cracks for whatever reason, and we're going to try to rectify that moving forward. So this has been a great budget exercise. This is one example of discovering untapped revenue stream. So, okay, anybody else? Hey, Britt?
Item number 18 is the circulation desk for the library.
Okay, this comes from a grant. Come on up, Jody, please. Thank you. Please turn the light on to green. Jody Grebanowski, our library director. Jody, welcome.
Good morning still. Yeah, so we applied for an OSHA grant to replace the circulation desk on the upper level, which has no ergonomic options whatsoever. Also takes about the full grant, but we did get $4,670.40. The Friends are matching $3,500, and from that, they are applying for a Virginia Foundation grant. And so Jan is working on that right now. And then we do have money in our account that we did put aside for desk and all that kind of stuff, because we have been slowly replacing stuff as necessary. And so the total that will be taken from the library budget is $3,897.43.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Johnson moves to approve. Is there support?
Support.
By Councilor Freely. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Beyondich.
And thank you for talking about the grants. Often when I look at these, it's nice to know that there's grant funding for them. So thank you for doing that.
Yes, you're welcome. Now, the sticker of this is why it was added to your agenda today, is I have 120 days to get this done, so, because it's an OSHA grant. Kind of need to order the desk so it gets here.
Okay, thank you. It has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries.
Item number 19 is approve the mayor and council to participate in the Twilight Holiday Parade, which will be held on November 18th, 2023 at 5:15 p.m.
At no cost to the city.
No cost.
Moved by Councilor Johnson. Is there support?
Support.
By Councilor Freely. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries.
Item number 20 is appoint a council member or mayor and an alternate to the Range Association of Municipalities and Schools Board.
Thank you. I will serve unless somebody else wants to. So there you go. Councilor Freely.
I've been serving for the past year. I was an alternate to Charlie, and I'm happy to continue in that capacity. It's a great group of individuals from the area, and does a lot of good work. So I'm more than happy to continue and/or be your alternate.
No, I think the motion was to, or on the agenda is to appoint a councilor or mayor as an alternate. You're the primary. This would be as a, we need to appoint both? Well, let's do the appointment first of the.
My term does expire the 31st.
Okay, looking for a motion with respect to appointing a mayor, to appointing a councilor as the primary representative for Rams.
So moved.
Moved by Councilor Johnson and supported,
Freely.
supported by
Clarify.
Councilor Beyondich to approve as a primary representative, or as the city's representative for Rams, to Councilor Freely. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? I don't think that's allowed. Okay, thank you. Motion carries.
Move to appoint the mayor as the alternative.
Thank you.
Support.
Moved by Councilor Johnson, supported by Councilor Motley to appoint Mayor Cuffey as the alternate for the representative for Rams. Is there any further, are there any other nominations? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is approve the memorandum of understanding with the state of Minnesota to officially designate the Youth Star Team Minnesota Task Force 2. We have Deputy Chief Eric Jonas in here.
And obviously, any response or any participation to us is reimbursable through the USR teams. Is that correct?
Correct. This solidifies our state designation as Minnesota's Task Force 2, and we've currently been operating on a handshake agreement between the state and our joint powers, Duluth Fire, Virginia, and the 148th. So this will solidify the $200,000 in base funding for our task force, and then also sets forth what the state's obligated to do, what Minnesota Task Force 2 is obligated to do, and just clarifies work comp issues, activation, reimbursements.
This is to codify in writing the agreement you already have.
Correct.
So move.
Move to approve by Councilor Friedeb. Is there support?
Support.
All right, everybody. Councilor Johnson, is there any further discussion? Councilor Johnson.
And Eric, I just want to thank you again for all the work you've done in the past to make this a reality for the city. I know you've been a project of yours for several years, so I appreciate that, and thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Chief.
All right,
Appreciate it
thank you.
very much. Okay.
And the final item that we have on the agenda is contract negotiations with AFSCME, and this portion of the meeting will be closed as per Minnesota Statute 13D05, Subdivision 3 for labor negotiations.
Okay, can we hold this in abeyance just in case anybody else has any other items of concern before we go into closed session? Okay, seeing none, looking for a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
By Councilor Johnson, supported by?
Support.
Well, Councilor Beyondich, is there any further discussion? Hearing, seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are now in closed session. We'll ask everybody in the audience to please vacate the council chamber so we can discuss contract negotiations. Thank you very much for coming tonight, and thanks for those who are listening at home. So we are now in closed session.